On 5 News Tonight, a British soldier is being hounded by lawyers over war crimes claims, a breast cancer scandal, and why are so many unarmed black men being shot dead by US police? Army bosses say they're investigating hundreds of complaints of war crimes by British troops. One former commander says their lives are being ruined.
The lack of moral fibre at the very top of the army means that servicemen and women have no confidence that the people in charge are looking out for them.
How thousands of women are missing out on a potentially life-saving drug that costs just 43 pence a day.
Y'all can't even look us in our face!
And a state of emergency is declared in North Carolina after a second night of rioting there. Also tonight, would you give a kidney away to a complete stranger? Well, more than 500 people have gone under the knife for someone they don't know and will never meet. I'll be talking to one of them.
Well, I'm looking for them both to be of equal size.
Plus, the Bake Off breakup is complete. Mary Berry has quit, so have Channel 4 bought a dud? Good evening, welcome to 5 News Tonight. I'm Matt Barbett. Lives have been ruined, enough is enough. That's what a former senior army officer has told 5 News after the government confirmed it's investigating mass allegations of abuse against British soldiers who fought in Afghanistan. More than 500 claims involving Afghan detainees are now being looked at by a special unit. It follows criticism about the scope of an inquiry into similar claims against British soldiers in Iraq, as Simon Viger reports.
Under fire from the Taliban and Iraqi insurgents, British soldiers say they're now under fire at home. The latest revelation is that Operation Northmoor is looking at more than 500 claims from Afghanistan. That's on top of 1,500 from Iraq. Commanders who were there say enough is enough.
We need to close that gap between what we say we are doing and what we are actually doing to look after those going through these investigations. There's absolutely no doubt that investigations backed up by credible evidence must be investigated. But we stand by our soldiers, we do not hang them out to dry.
The case of Sergeant Al Blackman divides opinion, even within the military. Some think his imprisonment for shooting a wounded Taliban fighter is justified. Others say the Royal Marine should be freed.
Yeah, I'll shut off this mortal coil, you nothing you would do to us.
Another notorious case is the death of Baha Musa in Basra in 2003. In 2007, one soldier pleaded guilty to inhumane treatment, and in 2011, a public inquiry found that Baha Musa had been beaten to death in British Army custody. Another inquiry reported in 2014 on a separate incident in Iraq. The Al-Swedi inquiry cost £25 million and cleared British soldiers of torture and murder, instead accusing Iraqis of falsifying claims. Now we know 550 cases relating to Afghanistan are being investigated, including a Taliban bomb maker who claims he was unlawfully detained. Today, the Prime Minister visited the Ministry of Defence. She's previously said she wants to crack down on unscrupulous lawyers, and this is today's statement from the Ministry. Our armed forces are rightly held to the highest standards, and whilst rare, where there are credible claims of criminal behaviour, we should investigate them. An independent investigation is the best way to make sure that innocent personnel are not dragged through the courts without cause. From the battlefields to the courtrooms, for better or for worse, our most recent wars are already the most scrutinised in military history. Simon Viger, 5 News.
Colonel Tim Collins is a former British Army commander who served in Iraq. I spoke to him a bit earlier on. I began by asking him about his reaction to these investigations.
Well, I'm hoping that we've learned the lessons of the past. Now, these investigations are by the military police into self-reported incidents by the British Army. It's internal whistleblowing. So the Afghans have made 551 allegations based on, I think there's something like 157 complaints. It's costing $7.5 million. So far, they've found nothing wrong. But that's what we have to learn from that. It was the Al-Swedi inquiry, which developed many of the cases had been investigated in the same way by the MPs, but that was set aside. It's a bit like having a referendum until you get the result you want. I think we have to say on this occasion, if the MPs find no wrongdoing, that should be an end to it.
In this case, though, wouldn't the end justify the means? I mean, what if wrongdoing was found? We've seen wrongdoing.
In which case, then military law must apply. But what we can't do is what is being attempted is to apply the international human rights standard, the standard that would fit here in the streets of London, to the battlefield. Now, if that has to be the case, then as a duty of care towards soldiers, we have to equip them and train them to the same standard we would a police officer operating here in London. And that's financial reasons and logistics skill is simply impossible. The other alternative is we stop deploying soldiers overseas ever again.
But like police officers, you would expect their behaviour to be unimpeachable, whiter than white, if you like. And we've seen, with the case of Baha Mousa, for example, in Iraq, that it's not always the case with soldiers. There are often, well, not often, but there's sometimes the odd bad apple.
Well, in the last 14 years, there's been two. And there's been thousands and thousands, 20,000 allegations to find two sets of wrongdoing, Camp Breadbasket and Baha Mousa. So when it happens, it is found out. And again, I come back to the point is that soldiers, by and large, are very upright creatures, and they will self-report. Most of these wrongdoing are reported by soldiers. There are no conspiracies because soldiers won't tolerate them. They're good and decent. But the thing I would add is these soldiers are struggling to understand what it is that the High Command are hoping to achieve. Seneca said 2,000 years ago, it's pointless having troops deployed in the field if there's no prudent counsel at home. If the government doesn't know what it would like the army to achieve by going into the field, how can 18-year-old soldiers from Belfast or Dublin or Glasgow or Birmingham figure it out for them on the ground as they go along? That's not fair, and it's not reasonable, and it's not possible.
Do you think that's the bigger issue here, is the way that successive governments have deployed soldiers, and now, perhaps, for the first time, once now they're not in theatre, as it's put, that those soldiers are starting to question why they had to do what they had to do?
Well, I think there's a number of issues around that. First of all, precisely as you say, soldiers are asking why they were ever put in that position. Secondly, most soldiers and officers feel very let down by their senior officers in terms of the timidness and lack of moral fibre they're showing towards defending their people. And that again leads to the question, ultimately, if we're going to send soldiers to the battlefield to adhere to the same standard we expect in the streets of London here, basically an industrial standard, then industrial protection must be afforded as a duty of care to the soldiers. That means trade unions. Are we going to have trade unions in the battlefield? We might have to.
Tim Collins, many thanks indeed. Now, a state of emergency has been declared in the American city of Charlotte after a second night of violence there. What began on Tuesday as a protest against the police shooting of a black man again descended into clashes, with officers firing rubber bullets, tear gas and flash grenades into the crowds, as Danny Sinha reports.
Y'all can't even look us in our face!
Squaring up to police, protesters want officers to know they've crossed the line. Hundreds of demonstrators have taken to the streets of North Carolina as police block the entrance to a hotel. This is a community who wants their force to acknowledge them. A second night of riots, police are aware that one false move could make the situation even worse. Officers used tear gas to disperse the crowd. Overnight, one person was shot and critically wounded by another civilian. At least 7 police officers were also hurt.
Enough is enough. It's gone too far. The cops in America are way too aggressive. They pick on the little people.
The riots started after Keith Lamont Scott was shot by police on Tuesday. He died in hospital. The officers who found him insist he was carrying a gun. His family, though, claim he was holding a book. Today, the police chief said they would only release video footage of the shooting to the family and stuck to their version of events.
What I can tell you, though, is when taken in the totality of all the other evidence, it supports what we've heard in the version of the truth that we gave about the circumstances that happened.
It's fanned the flames of America's issue of race and once again questioned if Black Lives Matter. The National Guard has been sent in to help police restore order. Looted shops and broken glass, a reminder that something here has broken and needs putting back together fast. Danny Sinha, 5 News.
We can cross live to Charlotte in North Carolina now and speak to Gloria Merriweather, who took part in those demonstrations last night. What was it like, Gloria?
It was a horrific scene, honestly. As powerful as we are as organizers and community members in the city, last night our police department used military force on us yet again with tear gas, rubber bullets, pepper bullets. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible.
Those of us watching what's going on in Britain will be reminded of this happening in several places across America over several months now. What is the problem between the police in the US and effectively black people?
I think we have to look at that historically. The United States Police Department are direct descendants of slave catchers when slavery was eradicated. So this very same entity that we expect to protect us was never actually meant to do so. It was actually meant to keep us enslaved and to keep us enforcing capitalism with free labor.
But how can that really still exist in the second decade of the 21st century?
Oh my goodness. It never really was ended. If we look at our history and our legislative history, even from the eradication of slavery on through, Black people have still been fighting for equitable resources, equitable treatment since the day slavery ended, right? So what we have is a mentality within government that there's a race of people who are less than another race. So enacting legislation that protects us rarely happens. You know what I mean? So it serves too many people for Black people to continue to die. Dead Black people makes money. Imprisoned Black people makes money.
Gloria, I'm afraid the line isn't great and we're just about out of time on that. But look, we really appreciate you joining us from Charlotte this evening. Do stay safe. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Police have arrested 16 people after reports of immigrants in the back of a lorry on the M1. The lorry was stopped in Bedfordshire as it headed north. Some of the people were treated in hospital before they were taken into custody. It's reported that phosphorus bombs have been used in an attack on the Syrian city of Aleppo. Footage emerged of huge fireballs erupting as the bombs exploded. It came as Syria's President Bashar al-Assad accused America of deliberately targeting his forces in an airstrike at the weekend. The US insists it was an accident. And CJ Demouy, a former panellist on the BBC quiz show Eggheads, has appeared in court after being arrested for an alleged killing. The 46-year-old appeared under his real name of Joseph Connor. He was arrested at Heathrow Airport in connection with an alleged incident in Amsterdam nearly 20 years ago. Now, thousands of women with breast cancer are missing out on a potentially life-saving drug that costs just 43 pence a day. The charity says even though the drug has been shown to stop the disease from spreading, patients aren't being offered it because of confusion about who funds it. Olivia Kinsley is with me now. Tell us more about this drug, Olivia.
So this is about a group of drugs called bisphosphonates. They've been traditionally used to treat osteoporosis when the bones weaken. But in recent years, they've also been found to be effective in stopping breast cancer spreading into the bones of women who've been diagnosed after they've had the menopause. Now, the charity Breast Cancer Now says that as many as 27,000 women a year who could be getting these drugs are not. That's despite research showing that they can cut the risk of dying in the first 10 years after diagnosis by 18%, and that they could save up to 1,000 lives a year. Now, the charity have found this out by speaking to cancer specialists, a lot of whom say that the principal problem with this seems to be confusion over who should pay for these drugs.
Yeah, frustrating when
there are so many bodies
so
involved in commissioning breast cancer, whether it's clinical commissioning groups and GPs or whether it's NHS England through their specialist commissioning bodies. It's just so confusing, and we've got some of the most fantastic clinicians in the world operating in the NHS, but we need to give them the tools to do the job.
As I was saying there, it's just frustrating when it seems to be affordable, 43p a day. So what's being done to sort the problem out?
Well, NHS England has said today in response to this that decisions on the funding of the drugs are currently made locally, but it said their use would be considered by NICE in upcoming guidance. That's the body that decides on which drugs are made available. The charity says that it wants these drugs to be made available to all patients across the UK as soon as possible.
OK, Olivia, thanks a lot. Still to come on 5 News Tonight. Taking generosity to a whole new level. We speak to the man who gave away one of his kidneys to a complete stranger. And after the Brangelina split, the actress Marion Cotillard speaks out about those Hollywood rumours. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News Tonight. Now think about this. Would you give away one of your kidneys to a complete stranger? Most people would probably say no to that question. Most people, but not all of them. More than 500 have now donated a kidney to a stranger in the UK, and one of them, Bob Wiggins, is here with me now. Why, Bob?
More to the point, why not? I found I was walking around with a spare kidney. I'm very healthy. One kidney is sufficient to do the job for me, and I've got a spare kidney. And I realized that there were people out there, there's 300 people a year die waiting for a kidney transplant. There's 5,000 people on the kidney transplant wait list. And their lives are not, they're not lives as they should be led, and it's avoidable.
You say you have a spare kidney. You also have a wife. What does she think about it?
Well, she wasn't too keen on in the early stages. But I tell you, when I received a letter from the recipient, she completely changed her view about the benefits of it.
What did it say? Who are they?
It was a gentleman, Terry. He's in his 60s, and he'd been on dialysis for the second time for about, I think, 6 or 7 years. And there's a limit to how much time you can spend on dialysis. So he was at the top of the transplant wait list, and he needed one quite urgently.
What about all those questions that people inevitably ask? You know, what if you get kidney disease yourself? Or what if someone you love, your wife, for example, needs a kidney? What would you do then?
Well, there's always a risk of that happening, but there's no history of kidney disease in either of our families. There's no reason to suspect. The incidence is quite low, but there's still lots of people that do have kidney disease, of course. Kidney disease often attacks both kidneys, so it's not like it attacked one and then you could use the other one. So when you weigh everything up, for someone like me anyways, it just made sense that I had one that I didn't need. I was unlikely going to need for anyone else. And it just made sense to give it to somebody that could use it now.
What does it feel like knowing that you've given someone the gift of life? Because quite often organs are given or donated by people after they're no longer with us. You can appreciate what you've done, though.
I can. I'm glad I did it. I would have been very disappointed if late in the day they said, I'm sorry, you're not suitable as a donor. I would have been quite gutted. But it's something that I did that I wanted to do, and it's behind me. My focus now is to raise awareness where I can. This is something that many people can do. It's not right for everybody. But if everyone stopped and thought about whether it might be right for them, then we could make a big, big dent into the transplant wait list and save an awful lot of lives.
And it hasn't made any difference to your physical well-being, your life?
I have no difference. I forget that I don't have 2 kidneys. I do nothing different now. I still eat the same junk food that I ate then. And life carries on without any difference whatsoever.
Well, when you tell people what you've done, and it's an amazing feat of altruism, let's be honest about it, how do they then react?
Well, yeah, some say, oh, what an amazing thing, you know, you're a hero. But what's really amazing is that health science can actually do this. They can take an organ out of a living person and put in another one, save their life, transform their life. It's the people they're the heroes that do it. I mean, that wasn't that difficult for me to go through the process. It just wasn't that difficult.
And are you keeping in touch with Terry and his family?
I do, yes,
yeah.
yes. In fact, I'll be seeing him tomorrow for lunch. But I've seen him, this will be the 4th time I've seen him since in the last 3 years.
Well, look, enjoy that lunch. Seems like you've got a friend for life, and you deserve to have that. Thank you very much indeed, Bob. Fascinating to hear your story.
Pleasure.
She was arguably the key ingredient to the Great British Bake Off success. But like Mel and Sue before her, Mary Berry has now announced she will not be a judge on the show when it moves over to Channel 4. Her reason, she says, is her loyalty to the BBC. But even though 3 of its stars are now leaving, the show is keeping some of its Hollywood appeal, as Ruth reports.
Yeah. A true baker. Just imagine it's dough and it'll be perfect.
If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. And it looks as if Mary Berry can't because she's off, confirming that she won't be going with Bake Off to Channel 4. In a statement today, she said, "My decision to stay with the BBC is out of loyalty to them, as they've nurtured me and the show," adding farewell to Soggy Bottoms. Paul Hollywood, though, is going with the dough, despite reportedly being offered a role on Top Gear if he stayed at the BBC. His statement said, "It's been a huge part of my life in the past few years, and I just couldn't turn my back on all that." But could a yes from Paul and a no from Mary be a recipe for disaster?
A lot of viewers will conclude that the Bake Off without Mary Berry is not the Bake Off.
It's not just about Mary, though. The show's already lost its presenters.
Interesting. As we say in the breakfast cereal world, cheerio. I'm leaving the tent, guys. It's been really great.
So let's imagine that this cake represents Bake Off, right? We take out one big slice of Mel, another slice of Sue, and one great big slice of Mary Berry. There's not that much cake left. And the customers at Rinkoff's Bakery were not happy at the news. Mary Berry is leaving Bake Off.
Oh my God.
I know.
Shocking.
Are you all right?
I'm okay. I think I'm okay. I don't know if I'm okay.
Mel, Sue and Mary.
That's betrayal.
I don't know how it's going to survive.
That's bad.
Yeah.
For the show and for the baking.
That's like an iced bun without the icing, isn't it?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
It's just a bun.
Exactly.
But after paying $75 million for it, Channel 4 will be desperate to make it work. So who on earth will they get to fill Mary's shoes? Richard Burr was a finalist on the show in 2014.
It's a poison chalice, isn't it? Whoever jumps into her shoes has got to basically win people over. And how can someone be more charming and more lovely than Mary?
These sound amazing in flavours. Be careful of the texture of the coconut that doesn't destroy it.
Oh, Paul, you might have more to worry about than the texture of the coconut. Ruth Liptrot, 5 News.
Thanks, buddy. That's all right.
And Ruth kindly brought that cake back to the newsroom for us. Banoffee. Let's speak now to Steve Hewlett, a former BBC executive, now a media commentator and presenter in our central London studio. Steve, how much would you pay for Paul Hollywood and a big tent with cooking facilities?
I'd be loath to spend 75 million quid, to be absolutely honest. Look, there's a couple of things about this. Look, the Bake Off that we know and love has taken years to perfect. It took the production company 4 years to sell it. It's taken the BBC and the production company together, 7 years to grow it. I can well remember that Mel and Sue, when they first started, it was a bit clunky. Paul and Mary sounded sort of slightly scripted. And it's, over the years, they've worked it. This is dreadful. There's going to be some baking analogies here, and I'm afraid I can't help it. They've worked this delicate mixture, and it's turned into this extraordinary programme, the most popular programme in Britain. It's got this extraordinary mixture of, blackbirds over the bluebirds over the White Cliffs of Dover, Women's Institute, Second World War, baking, nostalgia running through it like, Bake Off in a stick of rock. And also an amazingly diverse cast. So it's this remarkable thing. No one gets hurt, everyone's nice, hugs and kisses all round. It's just lovely. And even my 19-year-old who listens to rap music will stop on a Wednesday evening to watch Bake Off. So reproducing that without 3/4 of the talent is going to be very, very hard indeed.
Don't shy away from the puns. I mean, we love them when it comes to this story. But the thing that does remain, and you didn't mention it as one of its selling points, is the hunk himself, the man they call the Silverback, Paul Hollywood, and he is going. So that's one of the assets. Are you surprised that Channel 4 didn't secure the rest of them before they signed this expensive deal?
Well, in the world of TV, it is reasonably widely known now that ITV were still in negotiations and discussion right up until the 11th hour, right up until 4:30 on the afternoon when it was announced that the BBC had lost it. And I think the reason that ITV didn't bid is because the production company, Love, could not guarantee some of the talent. Now, everybody thought that the talent that was at issue was Mary. And as we now know, she has decided not to go with it. But she had previously said how important she thought the BBC was, how she thought the programme sat there at the BBC. It was quintessentially a BBC programme. So her departure, her decision is not really a surprise.
No.
The surprise actually was Mel and Sue, who sort of trumped them both, rather. But look, TV chemistry is gold dust. When it works, everyone can see it. It's just amazing when it works.
Well, that's why I do this show on my own, Steve, to be honest. there was talk of Jamie Oliver getting involved, maybe Joe Brand, who does obviously an extra slice at the moment. Now rumours of Phil and Kirsty, who are already Channel 4 names. That sounds like it could work, doesn't it?
Oh, great. And Nadia, maybe, as a judge, she said she'd do it. Look, it won't be about the quality of the individuals. It will be about the quality of the chemistry. And that's the hard thing. Remember Adrian and Christine, when they were on the One Show at BBC One, they were almost peerless. They had this extraordinary on and off air chemistry. Take them to ITV for the morning show, phut. And it's not because they're any worse than they were when they're at the BBC. It's just that change anything and you run the risk that your TV souffle collapses.
Well, that show was Daybreak, I remember it well. I mean, what about Channel 4 finally, Steve, spending all of this money? What signal does that send out about the channel themselves?
Well, for a channel that says, I mean, look, Channel 4's constitution, as it were, says it's supposed to serve interests of audiences not well served elsewhere. If in its DNA, it's quintessentially not the BBC. Whatever else it isn't the BBC. So if this was a really edgy programme the BBC was struggling with because of nudity or sex or bad language, everyone would say, fantastic, Channel 4's taken it. There couldn't be more quintessentially BBC. And people are now saying, well, what is Channel 4 for if this is what it does?
All right, Steve, many thanks indeed. We're out of time, I'm afraid. But finally, there have been endless rumours about Brad and Angelina's shock split, but now one star has issued an official denial that she was involved. Actress Marion Cotillard took the unusual step of speaking out after allegations that Brad had been having an affair with her. In fact, she says she's now expecting a child with the man of her life, her partner of many years, as Minnie Stevenson reports.
You guys look awesome tonight, man.
Just what might have happened between Brad and Angelina has become front-page news around the world, with earlier reports suggesting that Hollywood's golden power couple split was linked to his latest co-star and an alleged affair. Within hours of the news that Angelina was filing for divorce, this trailer of Brad and Marion Cotillard in their new film Allied was released.
They're watching us. Now kiss me.
But the French actress has made it clear on-screen chemistry does not translate off. Cotillard took the unprecedented step of releasing a statement strongly denying any involvement and announcing that she's now expecting her second baby with partner Guillaume Canet. The actress said, "This is going to be my first and only reaction to the whirlwind news that broke 24 hours ago and that I was swept up into. I am not used to commenting on things like this, nor taking them seriously, but as this situation is spiralling and affecting people I love, I have to speak up. Firstly, many years ago, I met the man of my life, father of our son and of the baby we are expecting. He is my love, my best friend, the only one that I need." As the breakup of one of the world's most famous marriages hits the headlines, it's a far cry from the couple who were for 12 years together, fiercely private.
So Brad and Angelina are one of Hollywood's most private couples. They're really, really protective of their children. And so for this to all be being played out in the public eye will be really difficult for them, and for there to be so much speculation about what was going on at the heart of their marriage.
News of the impending divorce of one of Hollywood's once most solid couples continues to be played out in public. It's hard to believe that less than 2 years ago, Angelina said of Brad, "We'll be together till the end of our days." Minnie Stevenson, 5 News.
And that's the end of the programme. I'll see you tomorrow again at 5 and then at 6:30. Have a good one. Bye-bye.